all the time. It's called the Australian salute. I call it the Australian wave. I was waving back to everybody, and here they were just shooting flies away. Australia, desert country, where we saw kangaroo crossing signs. Did we see them? I mean, we saw so many kangaroo crossing signs, but where are the kangaroos? You see, kangaroos are like deer in the USA. They're there, but they like to hide. So we saw more kangaroo crossing signs than we did kangaroos. But finally, we started to see kangaroos, and I got a picture of a mother kangaroo with a little baby joey sticking his head out of the pouch. And then we met some terrific people. We met the Aboriginal people of Australia, and we were pretty fortunate that those people were there. Just take a look here at this road. Now, I can tell you something. There is a road all the way around the world, except for the oceans, of course. I know because I walked every step. But in Australia, for 252 miles in the state of South Australia in 1973, that dirt road was the only road. And I mean, it was a bumpy, lumpy dirt road. Our wagon, bumpity, bumpity, bump, broke down. And there we were. I mean, two spoiled Americans. We could fix Fords and Chevrolets. We didn't know how to fix 200-year-old wooden-wheeled Turkish wagons. And the Aborigines, all of a sudden, they came out of nowhere. Wonderful people, the original people of Australia. And this guy and some of his friends, they knew just what to do. They fixed that Turkish wagon better than it was before. So we were helped by the Aborigines in Australia. And then we made it finally to a place called Siduna. We more or less left the desert country. And this is the last picture you'll see of my brother Peter. My brother Peter had to get back to California to his job. He'd left for 1 year. He helped me across Afghanistan, Pakistan, India, and the desert of Australia. But he had to get home. I said, Pete, go home. I'll never be able to thank you enough. I mean, what can happen now? I'm in the plains of Australia. Everybody speaks English. And sure enough, about a week or two after Pete was back here in California, out in the plains of Australia, tragedy. Will Willie make it too? The Australian mule died of a heart attack. I felt very sad about that, although I wasn't quite as attached to that mule as I was to that wonderful, big, lovable Portuguese mule. But I did feel bad. Some Australians happened along, and they helped me bury Willie, and then they gave me the bad news. Well, Yank, what are you going to do now? There are only mules for 1,000 miles, and then if you find one that's probably not trained. Of course, this is sheep country, thousands of sheep. Maybe the sheep can pull your wagon. Ha, I knew that would be a joke. So I really didn't know what I was going to do because I couldn't pull a little Turkish wagon. Then a good thing happened. Little Australian car stopped. There was an Australian school teacher named Jenny. And Jenny said I could tie my Turkish wagon to the back of her Australian car, and she would proceed to drive 4 miles an hour in low gear for 1,000 miles while I walked alongside so I could make it the rest of the way across her country to Sydney, the largest city on the Pacific Ocean. So we put Will and She Make It on the car, and I headed across eastern Australia. And we made it all the way to Sydney, the largest city on the Pacific Ocean. And I might say that sometimes a good thing does happen from a bad thing. The bad thing, of course, in Australia is that Will Willie made it too. The Australian mule died of a heart attack. But the good thing, Jenny and I, the Australian school teacher, we ended up getting married. And we're still happily married today. Of course, today we live in the United States. Jenny no longer teaches Australian kids. She teaches kids in the USA. But that day, Jenny would turn her car around. It would take her 4 days to drive back across her country to Perth, Western Australia. Big country. And guess what I had to do? Well, once I touched the Pacific Ocean off the shores of Sydney, I got on an airplane, flew across the Pacific, back to the good old USA, California, Newport Beach, Orange County. That's me, Dave, right there. And what do we have here? Well, the mayor of Santa Ana, California, presented me with a California mule retired from Knott's Berry Farm. And I called that mule from Knott's Berry Farm, Willie Will Make It. But a funny thing happened, and Willie Will Make It didn't make it. I mean, why do you think they gave me a 20-year-old retired mule? I don't know. Of course, I couldn't be fussy because I didn't have very much money, and they gave it to me. I just said, thank you very much, and it was a big mule. But that retired mule, let me tell you something, did not want to walk to Minnesota. Did not want to walk fast. I mean, you have to consider something here. I almost walked around the world. I was a lean, mean walking machine. I could walk 40 miles a day, 5, 6 miles an hour. That poor old mule didn't even want to walk 1 mile an hour. And I'm telling you something, about 20 miles down the road, the mule decided that's it. After giving me a hard time all day, and of course I gave her a hard time, and mules are pretty smart. She decided that's it. She's not going to walk to Minnesota, and she stopped right smack in a California intersection. I mean, cars are backed up, and there she stopped, and I pulled and pulled, and that mule wouldn't move a muscle. Stubborn as a mule. Get that mule off the road. People were getting irate. You know, American drivers. All of a sudden, the police officer drove up. He said, what's this traffic problem? Said, I can't get my mule out of the road. Oh, a nice police officer got out of his car, and he said, that's no problem. I'll give you a hand. I can handle horses. I said, she's not a horse. It's a mule. He said, same difference. I said, I don't think so. He grabbed a hold of that lead rope, and he pulled, and he struggled. He's about 220 pounds, and that mule didn't move a muscle. The police officer was a little bit embarrassed. Walked back to his car, looked at me, and he said, I'm going to get that critter out of the road. I said, go for it. So he started up his police car. He was careful. He was slow. Drove up behind Willie. Just got right up and barely touched Willie's tail with the front bumper of his police car. That mule still didn't move a muscle. That's when the police officer made a big mistake. He forgot that when mules are frightened, they kick. Turned on his siren, that mule let out a kick, bam! Smashed his headlight all over the street. Police officer jumped out of his car, looked at his smashed light, looked at me, and he said, when I come back, I better not see you or that mule around. So I called some nice people, and Willie was taken to a great stable, the Chino Hills Canyon Stables in California, and I headed off alone across the Mojave Desert. And I want to tell you something. This was one of the most difficult walks I made in the whole world. You see, we never had any real backup. No, siree. We did the walk alone. I mean, sure, once in a while there was two brothers and a mule, two brothers and a dog and a mule, and two brothers and a dog and a mule in the wagon. But when I walked across the Mojave Desert, I was alone. All I had on my back was a very small backpack, very small, because I don't believe in carrying things on my back. That's for mules. 2 little canteens. But I thought, hey, I'm in the USA. I'm following along the freeway, walking into the traffic, waving to people so they know I wasn't hitchhiking. And one afternoon, desert of California, in the summertime, about 118 degrees, I ran out of water. I'm not worried. I said, hey, 60 cars a minute going up and down. I'll just take my canteen upside down, somebody will stop. Ha! You think anybody stopped for me in California freeway? Not that day they didn't. So I'll tell you what I had to do. I decided that I'd keep walking, because you know we're pretty fortunate in California that there are on the freeway lots of overpasses within a reasonable walking distance. And I made it to one of those overpasses, and once you get underneath there, you're in the shade. And if you stay up underneath there real nice all day long like I did, you're fairly cool there, convection current. And then when it was nighttime and it was cool on the desert, I got out and I started walking. And of course, here again in the USA and the freeway, usually within a reasonable walking distance, gas station, restaurant, maybe a ranch off a quarter mile. I got lucky, hit a gas station, got some water. Everything turned out all right. Then it was into Colorado. I walked across the Rocky Mountains of Colorado. Actually, took a little shortcut here through the Eisenhower Tunnel. Then it was down into the Iowa corn country. This is what I looked like when I walked the last 2,000 miles from California to Waseca, Minnesota. Of course, in the Iowa corn country now, I've only got about 100 miles to go. I've already walked about 14,450 miles. I stopped one day and I was taking a little rest break, you know? And lots of times I'd slip off my shoes and my socks and I'd kind of air my toes a little bit. This particular day I looked down at those bare feet and I said, hey, I'm going to take my camera here, point it down at the feet, take a picture of the feet that walked around the world and wore out 21 pair of shoes. There they are. Now, don't they look pretty? Now you have to remember, of course, that in the very beginning my feet were white, tender, and anemic, got blistered and sore. And I could only do 15 miles a day, 3 miles an hour. But by now I'd walked around the world. I could walk 40 miles a day. Those feet were tough-skinned and calloused. Sure, they're red. That's because it's the end of the day and they were tired. They'd walked about 40 miles. And look at the shoes we used. I mean, we tried everything. Tennis shoes, hiking boots, sandals, you name it. But the best kind of shoes for walking a road around the world, flat surface, we decided were these leather work shoes. Very good leather work shoe with a thick sole. Then we'd improve on them a little bit. We'd slit them right about there because that would give us a little bit more air and a little bit more room. Finally, after 4 years, 3 months, and 16 days, I walked back to Waseca, Minnesota, where I'd started, raised my hat in the air, stomped my foot in the ground, and I became the first person verified to have circled the landmass of the Earth on foot. And now I'd just like to leave you with this thought. I told you my true story, how I walked around the world. I mean, think of it. If I can walk all the way around the world, then I guess I can do just about anything. And so can you and you and you and each and every one of you. Because I'm a human being, you're human beings. If you make up your mind you can do something, I make up my mind, I showed you that I can do something, you can do whatever you want. Just make up your mind to do it. Thank you.